welcome back to the Crosspoints Podcast. We are here for Season 1, Episode 2. Welcoming back with Aura and David.
Or
David and Aura?
Depends on what you want to do. Right?
Just, you guys pick whose voice you like better, and then you can say their name first. So we're going to say, welcome to the Crosspoints Podcast with Aura and David. And
you see how she snuck that in there?
We are excited to start Episode 2 with you guys. I wanted to share with you that at the end of every episode, we will be doing a Q&A with Pastor David. If you didn't know, he's the pastor of our church. So he will be answering any of your questions. So you can, do a follow-up question, ask him why he doesn't like animals, like he mentioned in Episode 1, or a theological question. So send in your questions, comment below. You can also email them at podcast@crosspointschurch.com. And also don't forget to follow us or subscribe so you're up to date with all our new episodes when we put them out.
Fantastic.
Whoop, whoop. So This episode is going to be about less control and more direction.
Less control, more direction. Okay.
Yes. So I was trying to think of like a time where I was around somebody that I just was like, they're losing control. Like they cannot handle this.
Right.
And the thing that came to mind was learning how to drive.
Oh, yes. Okay, sure.
I mean,
I can see that.
Yes. Okay. So my mom.
Okay.
Sorry, Mom. She was just so stressed about me learning how to drive.
Really?
I'm the youngest of 3 girls, by the way, so she should have had a little more, she should have been ready.
Right, okay.
But there was a lot of, pushing the pedal on the ground that's not on the passenger side.
Okay.
A lot of,
You could hear the anxiety.
Yes, a lot, the whole time.
Yes, okay.
By the way, I've never been in an accident.
Oh, good for
she
you.
She was so stressed. Like, the idea of, not being in control of the car. She could not handle it. She was so stressed.
So you think that was really the deal? Like, she wanted the control?
Totally.
Okay.
For sure.
All right.
I think I do it with Phil when he's driving, that I want to be driving.
It's been passed down.
Yes, exactly.
Legitimately.
Thanks, Mom.
Okay.
Thank you. I know. And even now, when we go back to California, she prefers Phil to drive. Like, if it's her car, she'll be like, why doesn't Phil drive?
Are you
I've never been in
serious?
an accident. She just can't handle, the idea of her daughter driving. I don't know.
Wow.
She's not ready for it.
I had a little bit of a traumatic experience learning how to drive as well.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
So my dad taught me how to drive.
Okay.
Stick shift. Right?
Love it.
Did you learn on that as well?
I didn't, but I did. That was my first car, was the stick shift
Okay,
car.
it was.
So,
all right. So here I am in the car.
Okay.
Dad's on the passenger seat. My girlfriend's in the back seat.
No. Who takes their girlfriend
I
on a
don't
driving
know
lesson?
what my dad was thinking or what I was thinking. I don't want to blame my dad. It was probably me.
Yes.
So
it was
he's
totally
trying to teach me how to shift, and he's a very intense kind of guy. And my wife was, my girlfriend at the time, she's freaking out because my dad is yelling at me, and I'm yelling at him, and we're trying to get the car going. And then it took me forever to learn how to drive.
Lots of stalling.
Oh, lots of stalling.
Oh my goodness.
My dad watching the traffic, watch this, watch that. I was freaking out.
I feel like the pressure on you would be so great right there to show up for your girlfriend. I mean, I wouldn't
so
know.
Bad. Why?
Why did you do that to yourself?
I don't know.
That's crazy.
Why didn't he say, hey, maybe not a good idea to take your girlfriend?
That sounds awful.
Yeah.
Are you going to be the one who teaches your kids how to drive?
Ooh, good question. You know what? I bet I might.
You think you're going to be the one to take control of that?
I think I might, yeah.
What do you think? What do you think that you'll bring to the table that your wife won't?
Well,
she's not into it?
I think, honey, I love you. I think she has more control issues than I do.
You do.
I do.
She's going to be a lot more of the...
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of,
for sure, yeah.
Okay.
I think I'm more kind of the steady presence.
Phil will definitely have to do it for our kids.
So you already admit that?
I mean, there's no way I'd be able to teach our kids how to drive. It was so stressful. I'm not ready for that.
Right. Well, we're talking today, though, about control versus direction. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes in life, we want to hold on to the steering wheel of life.
Yes.
We want to know where we're going, why we're going, what the end destination is going to be. I think everybody has that, in their life. They want to know where they want to know what they're going to be when they grow up.
Yes, that's
right?
the question you ask at way too young. You're asking kids that question.
Absolutely. And you know what? I run across people all the time. I was talking to someone today, and they're in their 60s, and they're like, yeah, that's me. I want to know who I'm going to be when I grow up.
It's stressful.
Right.
It brings a level of stress to have to figure out what your calling is, what you're supposed to do.
Right. Okay. So there you go. So we're nailing into kind of what is our calling?
I would love to know.
Okay, so tell me, what was your experience? Because I'm sure you've had some with this.
So I went to a Christian school for college called Oral Roberts University.
Okay.
Not sure if you've heard of it.
I have. Christian University.
Christian University, very Christian. Mm-hmm. And it's the pressure to have your calling at that school, which I loved ORU. It was a great school. But it was so strong. It was palpable.
Who was pressuring you?
Well, okay, so my freshman year, I went in as undecided.
Okay.
The amount of people who go into undecided are so slim.
Oh, really?
Everybody knows what they're going to do. Yes.
I would not have guessed
they're
that.
They're Christian, so you need to go in knowing what God's
You've
kind
prayed
of calling.
and heard God's voice, and it's already clear.
Oh my goodness, it's so stressful.
And what was wrong with you? You didn't hear God's voice?
No,
Was that the problem?
no,
Okay,
I did not.
all right.
I did not. I was like, what am I supposed to do here?
Undecided.
Yes. And
it was probably in all caps, too, right?
It was and I had to wear it on a hat every day. It was so stressful. And I just remember even in chapel services and everything, there was just such a burden to pray and be like, where is God leading you?
Right.
What are you supposed to do?
Right.
Because there's even ministry options at ORU. You can be a missionary. That's a major you can do there. So it's not just your career, but it's also your spiritual path of what is your calling.
Correct.
And truth be told, I just ended up taking a bunch of classes, and then my junior year went and said what can these be? And that's how I got my. I never declared a major.
You never declared.
No, I did in the end, but I was like, hey, what can I do with these classes? Because I'm undecided.
Oh, that's funny. So what did you end up getting your degree in?
Theology.
Okay.
International Community Development, double major.
Okay.
Minor in just science. I had a science minor.
Just off on the side there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Environmental studies.
But you felt the pressure and the weight of calling.
Yes.
Who am I going to be? What am I going to do?
Yes, and I feel like I still have a lot of friends who still feel that pressure, who still are not wanting to should you give up on a dream? Should you go for a dream? When will you feel fulfillment in your job?
Yeah.
It's just a lot to know, how much should you feel fulfilled in your job? Because is that supposed to be your calling? Is that what the gifts that God gave you? It's tough.
It's totally tough. Well, there was this guy by the name of Frederick Buechner, this German guy. I know. How about that? Okay. And he says this, which I really liked. He said, the place God calls you is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet.
Poof.
Whew. Okay, so that's heavy, right?
All right. Wow.
Your
Where is that
joy,
place?
your joy, so to speak, right?
Okay.
And the world's needs, that intersection, is kind of where your call is.
Ooh. Okay.
Okay, but that's difficult, right?
Yes.
So that's real theological and real heavy.
Yep.
But I was reading this article in Forbes. Okay.
Okay.
And they
Which
talked.
you casually read Forbes
Of
magazine.
course,
Okay.
why not? They're talking about calling, all that kind. But they had these 20 different tips on how to find your calling.
Oh, interesting.
Very practical.
Okay. I like it.
So I thought it was really good.
Yes.
So I'm going to share some of those
Please,
with you. Okay.
yes.
So I condensed it from 20 to 10.
Okay.
So we'll roll through these real quick. Okay.
All
So
right.
the first one was, what we do today matters. Because a lot of times people are always looking out there. What am I going to do when? What am I going to do once I arrive?
Totally. Yes. Yep.
But the writer here was saying, no, do what's in front of you.
Okay.
If you begin to do what's in front of you, then it will help set your trajectory for where you're going to be.
Okay.
So I thought that was good.
I like that. idea.
And then the second thing is that you should shop around other ideas. In other words, try out different things.
That's hard.
Okay, tell me why you think that's hard.
Because I feel like the people who do kind of bounce, you're kind of are they lost? Should we be praying for them? They're all over the map.
They're the lost souls that are just kind of doing
you're
whatever.
Just wow, I thought they were just doing this. What's going on?
So do you think there should be an age, in your 20s, it's okay to kind of move around and do different things?
Oh my goodness, I don't know. You should probably, but I don't know. That's hard.
What if you're in your 60s and you're done with one career and you're like, I never really kind of found my calling in life?
No, yeah. I think you should do it at any time.
Okay.
I just feel like I feel like that's so hard to do, to be willing to be actually I'm going to try something totally, I'm going to be a dancer, or I'm just going to try something totally different.
Obviously, when you're younger in life, that's an easier thing to do.
Yes.
Right. I think the older you get, the harder it is, until maybe you get to retirement.
Yes. Although I would say that even as you feel the weight of people around you as a youngster of being I've been doing soccer since I was in middle school. Can I just stop this now?
That's true.
That's kind of that's intense.
Well, anyways, the writer was the idea was, hey, try different things.
Yes.
Don't get locked on one thing. Okay. Then the other one, which I thought was really good, is say yes to odd opportunities.
I like talking in a podcast.
Yeah, right. You didn't know that was going to happen, right?
Yes, I
right.
like it.
And then here
it.
you are now doing it.
I'm a professional podcaster.
You may make this into a career.
There we go.
Maybe making some real money here.
Okay. Advertisers.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. Okay. And then another one was find a problem to solve.
Okay.
I think everyone can have they have skills and unique abilities to solve certain problems.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So find a problem and try to solve it.
Okay.
Okay.
Easier said than done, but I like it.
Absolutely.
I like it.
Okay.
If you really think about it.
If you think about it, and then it moves on, and then she goes in and she says, and burn your plans.
Wow, burn your plans.
Burn your plans, right? Okay.
That's big.
Do you understand that?
Yeah, that's
what does
big.
that mean to you when I say that?
Well, to me, that means like, you know, you have all these like ideas going forward of like, and then I'll do this marker, and then I'll hit this marker.
Right. I want to control my life.
Yes.
It's going to be this way, right? I mean, this is what we're talking about. Control
True.
and direction.
Yeah.
So burn the plans. Life isn't going to go the way you think it's going to.
Wow, that's good.
Right?
I like
Okay.
that.
All right.
So far, I'm
all right.
into
So good.
Forbes.
Okay. Don't follow someone else's dreams.
Okay.
How many people have
Touche.
done that? Right?
Yes.
Follow your own dreams.
Yes, that's hard. Yes.
Right, exactly. Okay,
Yes.
here we go. We're going to keep rolling through this. The other one is feel free to change your mind.
Another hard one.
And I think that's really hard. But I think some people are in careers they absolutely hate.
I know.
And so why are they there?
I know. Well,
They feel stuck.
they do. Yes. And here's another question though, like, should you love your career?
Ooh, good
or
question,
like,
right?
should you, like, I don't know, like, is your career and you're calling the same
Well, this
thing?
goes back to what Buckner said, right?
Okay.
He said, where your joy and the world's needs meet, that's where they intersect.
Yes.
So there has to be some kind of joy,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I
Yep.
think God puts that within us.
Okay.
So we'll get down to that in a little bit. Okay.
Okay, all right.
So spend your time before your money. Now, this one I thought was really good.
Okay,
In other
explain that
words,
one a little bit.
Don't spend $50,000 on a college education for an undecided major. Sorry, I was gonna put that there. Right, but there's a lot of kids that do that, right? They just they know that college is what they're supposed to do, and so they feel pressured to do that, and so they're spending all this money instead of investing the time to really think through what they want to do and maybe like volunteering in certain capacities
Yes.
and finding out what their real passion is.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'd say spend your time instead of your money first.
Yes. I, at ORU, when I was doing that ICD major, and the environmental studies minor my senior year, I was like, okay, well, I'll just go like purify water sources. I'll do like missions work. I'll purify water sources.
Right, okay.
My last senior year summer, or not summer, but it was like the last semester, I did a class doing that, and it was awful. I was like, I'm not going to do this.
You're like, I am not going down this path.
I know, yeah.
That's
so
good.
just
See?
timing that.
So there you go. Right. Okay. So the other one is think the long term.
Okay.
Think the long game. In other words, so one of the guys in our church, he talks about the dash. Live for the dash. Know what the dash is? Yeah, I mean, I heard that, right?
No.
Okay. So, on our tombstone, you have born in 19 whatever.
Yes.
And then you have the dash. And then you have the when you what do you do during the dash?
I like that.
Right? That's the long game, right? We're on Earth here, 80, 90 years maybe?
I hope so.
If we're lucky,
Yes,
right? Okay.
I'll take it.
Okay, you'll take it. And so think about the long term. Like, what are you going to do over the span of your life?
Okay.
And when you get to the end, you're going to look back. What is it that's going to bring you joy?
Yeah.
Saying, I did this. I left a legacy. I did whatever.
Yeah.
I got some more. Okay, last one.
Ooh, all right.
And I think this is great. You don't need to be the best.
What?
Because our culture says you have to be the best, the
This is
greatest.
true.
You have to be number one. You don't have to be number one.
Well, because you feel like if that's what God like called you, like surely you should excel at this, right?
Right.
I mean, it seems like that.
Right. Well, which goes to a verse that we have, which
Okay.
is in Colossians. So Paul's writing to this church in Colossus, and he
Okay.
says this. He says, whatever work you do it with all your heart. Do it for the Lord and not for men. So I would say do it with all your heart, but not necessarily you don't have to be the best.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean to you when I say that?
To me, that means like you're trying your darndest, you're enjoying it.
Okay.
You're like, it's almost like a worship act in doing it.
Right.
But like you might not be, enlightening people, or you might not be,
You're not in competition with others.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. You're doing it with all your heart, doing what you can. But,
Okay.
but we're not worrying about other people.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So calling. I think calling is really interesting, and I want to kind of talk at it from a theological
I
perspective.
would
Is that
love
okay?
a
Can we do
biblical
this?
perspective. Yes,
Okay.
it is.
So there's this guy by the name of Os Guinness. He's a great theologian.
Okay.
And he has some real interesting thoughts about calling.
Okay.
And he comes at it from what is the Eastern perspective, Hinduism, Buddhism.
Okay.
What do they say about calling,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Okay, so
what
that's
do
kind of
they
neat.
say?
Okay. So they basically, in essence, they say forget it and forget yourself. Forget yourself, right?
Oh,
because we're on this wheel of suffering is what Buddhism and Hinduism say, right?
Okay.
We're just supposed to lose ourselves in this mass conscious, right?
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And so that's the perspective is like, you don't need to worry about yourself. It's just okay. Just lose yourself. And the more you lose yourself, the more purpose you have.
Wow.
I don't understand that.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's kind of that Eastern kind of perspective.
Okay, so that's just like you just live your life. Just live your life. Don't worry about your calling. Is kind of what it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Okay.
Okay.
And then you have this secularist atheist perspective.
Okay.
Right, which is interesting. There's no God. There's everything is chance.
Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then that means that you are directing, in other words, you're controlling your own life.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah, and one guy said it's like putting the world on your shoulder, right? Like everything that's going to happen in your life is up to you.
Yeah.
Right.
You're knocking on opportunities.
You're the captain of your own ship.
Yes.
You're directing. You're doing whatever you want to do.
Yeah. Okay.
And so whether you succeed or fail, whatever your calling is, that's up to you.
Okay.
You figure it out. Of course, from a biblical perspective, it's very different.
All right.
Okay, because it's not chance, it's not impersonal, it's not you doing it, but we come at it from a perspective that says God's created us. So God's created you. And since He's created you, He's put within you certain abilities, certain skills, certain talents. In other words, He's created you for a purpose. And that's really different. When you understand that, okay, you've got a purpose, you've been created for something particular, that means that you can live out that calling that He has for your life. Okay. Which is really interesting because at the end of the day, we're called, Jesus says, to follow Him, right? He says, come follow me.
Yeah. So do you think that's like that's it? Like we don't need to be like pressuring ourselves so hard to find the bigger?
Well, I don't think that. Okay. I think we have to break it down into two things, right? There's an initial calling for a Christian, right, to follow Jesus. That's our first and foremost calling, right? It's following Him, whatever He calls us to do. Now, the second is kind of interesting, and it leads from the first, right? And if you think about it, I'm going to take a step back. It's almost like the original church was called the ecclesia. Right? Okay. You know that. You're a theology major, right? Come on. It's what is ecclesia? It's the called out ones. Okay. We're the called ones. And so I think so that leads into our second thing, which is that He doesn't just call us to follow Him, He calls us to certain things, like to peace, to fellowship, suffering even, and to service. It's a little rude. I just dropped a whole lot of stuff on you. I don't like that calling. You don't like that, right? But I think it's really interesting when we think about that we're called to certain things. Okay. That there is something innate within us that God's called us to do. And
your point is that we were born with these giftings to bring us fulfillment or fullness in these callings, I guess.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, for sure. I think God has given us that certain skill set that says, okay, I've given you this, so I want you to steward those gifts that I've given you. I know I'm using some biblical words here, but I want you to use those gifts that I've given you, and at the end of the day, I'm going to hold you accountable for those gifts that you've been given.
Okay. Ooh, that's a lot of pressure. Ooh boy. Talk about pressure from God.
Watch out. Okay. But how do we hear our call? Yes. And how do we find that?
How do we find it?
That's a whole nother.
And practically, how do you find it?
Right. Practically, how you find it. Well, and I think, we made fun of it at the beginning, but there is a certain degree of saying, okay, God, what is it that you have for my life? Okay. Right. And I don't think enough people stop. Okay. And really ask that question. Now, you may have, maybe in college. You tell me, did you?
I think that, yes. Okay. I feel like yes. But I would also say it's not like I'm a master at hearing from God. I'm not like, oh my goodness, well, I know what He told me to do. Like, I hear from Him daily.
I bet you're average like most people, right?
Yeah.
So when you got quiet and tried to hear for God's voice, what kinds of things flooded through your mind?
Oh my goodness. I don't know. But I will tell you that, like, I think that I did a lot of missions work in college, so a lot of times I felt like that was what He was leading me to do. Okay. I don't think I'm called to be a missionary, though. You know what I mean? Right. So, like, there was stuff where I felt like He called me in certain lanes in certain times, but maybe not the overall, like, this is your calling. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. In other words, you felt like you had kind of a general understanding of what God wanted you to do, but not necessarily specific. Yes. Is that what you're talking about? And it's the specificity, I think, that gets people, like, concerned. Like, am I doing the right thing?
Yes. Right. Yes, totally.
Right. And so then, and I know I might sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but I think God's given us certain gifts and abilities, but I don't think it's necessarily that He's called us to work at XYZ job. Okay. Does that make sense?
So this is interesting. So you're saying that, like, maybe it's not so job based as like we might think that it is.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think we think that in our American culture context, that we think, okay, my job defines who I am. Yeah. And in reality, it should be our gifts and talents that God has given us that define more of who we are. I mean, at the end of the day, we're defined by who we are in Christ. But He's poured in all these gifts and skills and talents, and that should define us. Okay. Because that's what He's given us. Yeah. And I think if we walk in those passions, we're going to experience joy in whatever we do.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Then we're not so much chasing a career as we're chasing the gifts that God's already given us. And we'll know those things by trying them out.
Somebody get a pen, because this guy's on fire.
Does that make sense?
That's good. Yeah, I like it. I like it.
So I think calling is really important, and I think a lot of people, again, I don't, whether you're in high school or whether you've retired, I think a lot of people are asking that question, and I think they have to ask the first one, what are the gifts and callings that God has put in my life? Or I should say, what are the gifts that God has put in my life?
Yes, and I like going back to that idea of like the gift that he gave you doesn't mean that you're going to be the best at that. Like you could be a singer, that doesn't mean you're Mariah Carey or like whatever. Like you could just, that could still be your gifting.
Absolutely, that's right, yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's like really, it's good.
Yeah.
It's good. I really like it. Because I really like I think of the idea of trying to find the whole of like, oh, like, is receptionist what God's called me to do?
Right.
Like, oh my goodness, this is my calling. But then like, how you marry that with like.
Yeah, because I think, again, we're so based here in America that it's what your job is. And if we're not defined by our job, but we're defined by what God has put in us, it flips the script.
Yeah.
Right?
That's great.
And then it doesn't matter if you're a secretary or if you're a president of a company or whatever.
Yeah. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Well, hope you guys got a pen for that.
Yeah. That was a lot.
Let's go ahead and end on a question for you today.
Okay. I love the questions.
All right.
Okay.
Here's the question of the day.
Okay.
I was recently reading the story of the fall and noticed that the snake, cough, cough, the lizard, is never actually mentioned as Satan specifically. How do we actually know that this is Satan, and why wasn't he punished more severely, or it punished more severely?
Okay, this I think is a great question.
Ooh,
okay, I love this question.
question.
Whoever came up with it, brilliant question. And I think it's really interesting that if you look back in Genesis chapter 3, you find that really there is no specific mention that it is Satan.
Yeah.
I mean, right?
Yes,
you read through that,
guess.
you know it's not. But theologians have kind of placed Satan kind of over the top of this, and they've done it for a particular reason. That that Satan and the serpent are kind of one and the same. And here's why they say this. Is that in Romans 16, it says this, the God of peace will soon crush Satan under your feet. It's the idea of Satan being the snake back in the day.
Okay.
And we're going to crush him under our feet. Okay, that maybe is a little bit nebular, right? But Revelation 12 says this, the great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, who leads the whole world astray.
Okay.
So they reach back into Revelation where John is saying, hey, this is the ancient serpent. Well, what is the ancient serpent? I mean, I don't think it takes too much to kind of go back to Genesis chapter 3 and say, well, that was the ancient serpent that led the whole world. He led mankind astray.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Or in Revelation chapter 20, it says he sees the dragon, that ancient serpent, again, who is the devil or Satan, and bound him for 1,000
By the way,
years.
I like that I refer to it as a lizard and they're calling him a dragon.
Look at that.
Like, whoa.
Fascinating, right?
Yeah.
But what I think is really interesting is that Eve isn't shocked that a snake is talking to her.
I thought the same thing.
I mean, what is up with
that? Are there
that?
talking animals? Like, is that just the norm?
Right. So I did some research.
Okay.
And this was interesting, is that from a Jewish perspective, okay, all the animals before the fall could talk.
All of the animals?
All of the animals could talk. They had one language and one voice.
What?
I mean, think about like C.S. Lewis Narnia.
Yes.
All of the animals are talking.
Oh my gosh,
and
I
wonder if Lewis kind of reached back to this Jewish heritage kind of thing.
That is so interesting.
And brought that into the fold.
Yes.
I wonder.
That is so interesting.
Okay, so there's another one too, is that Josephus. You know Josephus, he's kind of this extra biblical character. Okay, you don't. Okay, a lot of people might know. Okay, so he had some extra biblical thought back in the first century. Okay, he wasn't a Christian, but he was a Jew. Okay. And this is what he said. He said that the snake grew jealous of the blessings of Adam and Eve and believed that their disobedience would bring them trouble. And so this is why he tempted them, because he was jealous of them.
Ooh, so animals are experiencing jealousy.
Look at that.
I guess we're assuming
if they're
Satan,
talking and all that other,
yes.
and if it might be Satan as well. So.
Wow. Okay.
So 3 different options there for you.
Okay. Yeah. So we're saying that even the OG people in the Bible assumed that was Satan.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
we're just
I mean,
going with
again,
what they
reaching
said.
back to Revelation, we kind of we got the bookends of the Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's say that.
Wow,
so,
that's really
So that would be the answer I would give to that.
Okay, I like that.
Great.
Well, that is the conclusion of season 1, episode 2.
We did it. Number 2.
We did it. So send us more questions if you have them, and don't forget to subscribe or follow us. Happy listening.